Countries within the Eastern Africa bloc have been engaging in cross-border energy trade, and among the latest deals include construction of transmission infrastructure between Kenya and Ethiopia at a cost of $233 million. However, stakeholders believe that realization of the Eastern Africa power pool will be a critical step towards achieving efficient power trade among countries. Here's more. The average economic growth in the larger Eastern Africa over the last decade has been between 5 to 6% every year. During the period, respective countries have emphasized on the need to industrialize and streamline growth sectors such as transport, hence creating a huge demand for energy.
What this means is industry is coming in industrialization from Ethiopia down to Mozambique. You will find that every country is now looking at the possibilities of industrialization. You've got things like the SGR. That alone demands 1,000 megawatts, just one train. And then let's not forget the fact that there are over 650 million Africans who are still in the dark.
As countries move to meet the individual power deficits, cross-border energy trade has become a necessity. In 2005, an intergovernmental memorandum of understanding was signed among 7 Eastern Africa countries to develop energy sources and promote power exchange among them. Today, the so-called Eastern Africa Power Pool covers 12 countries, among them Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Libya and DRC. However, the pool is yet to be fully realized, with its largest single achievement being formulation of a master plan, which was ratified by member governments in January 2016. The master plan recommends construction of 9 transmission lines with a total capacity of 3,400 megawatts to be in place by the year 2020.
The master plan is really pointing out how can these 12 countries interact and what transmission lines should be in place for that. So that's the first thing. You need the transmission lines, and they are quite costly, so it's very important to have at the right place, at the right time, and at the right capacity. So that's the kind of the delivery of the master plan. 2/3
of Africans still don't have access to energy. So the power pool is one of the solutions that will help us fix that. You need more power. We need more generation. We need better transmission and better distribution to get power to those people. So working with the power pools to make sure that the capacities are built, making sure they have the right technical specifications, that the grid is building smart, making sure the interconnectors are there are going to be essential to solving that problem.
By the year 2025, the master plan states that Eastern African countries should have cross-border transmission capacity of 6,100 megawatts of electricity to be constructed at an estimated cost of $1.6 billion.
And typically, transmission lines would be owned by the transmission system operators, typically would be state-owned. They could also be private, but it's not that important. The transmission lines is really the infrastructure needed to trade. It's kind of a running procedure that each of the 9 lines can be approved, and the master plan is kind of the documentation that these lines are really relevant. There might come ideas of other lines, but the 9 lines that we have pointed on is really the most important ones. And we have, the study has been very extensive, testing many different lines.
We are putting a lot of money into building the infrastructure to connect countries through grid systems, intergrids even within the countries. So we've got the Ethiopia-Kenya transmission line. We call it the electronic superhighway because it's over 1,000 kilometers, over $1.5 billion. We've got the Kenya-Tanzania. We got Kenya and Uganda connected. Uganda and Rwanda we are having connected. Burundi, Rwanda, DRC through the Ruzizi. So we are putting the resources into the infrastructure.
The financing needs come on the back of a huge funding gap to achieve universal electricity connectivity in sub-Saharan Africa. Statistics show that to achieve this goal, the region must invest $70 billion every year between 2016 and 2030 in power generation, transmission and distribution. At the moment, total investment is $4.6 billion annually.
What it will take is a concerted effort by all concerned. Governments need to carry their share. The private sector needs to carry its share. Institutions like ours need to come and play a catalytic role. We need to bring some money to the table, yes, but we also need to de-risk investments into the sector.
As the region aims to power industries and enable last-mile connectivity to citizens, initiatives such as Power Africa, endorsed by the United States, are becoming essential. The initiative recently announced $1 billion as part of the $9.7 billion commitment to add 10,000 megawatts of power and supply electricity to 20 million households within 5 years.
On our side, I think we have a very transactions approach. Now those transactions often we see enabling environment fixes that we can help. So for instance, we helped rewrite and help the government of Kenya rewrite the grid code here in Kenya to make sure it can take on renewable energy, to make sure it can take on the massive amounts of intermittent wind, for instance, that are going to come onto its grid very soon. We work across to make sure when we see a transaction where exactly the obstacles might be. And that could be on either side. That could be helping the companies understand the regulatory framework. That could be policy suggestions we have on the regulatory side. That could be working with technical skills like PPAs and so on and so forth.